Welcome to the WebMD Health Discovered podcast. I'm Dr. Neha Pathak, WebMD's Chief Physician Editor for Health and Lifestyle Medicine. Today, we're discussing specific ways to support mental health and well-being in our children and teens. If you're a parent, you know we're facing a youth mental health crisis nationwide. Many of us are struggling to help our kids manage the stress and day-to-day complications of everyday life. Studies show that when students are healthy, both physically and mentally, they're more likely to excel in all aspects of academic achievement, academic performance, behavior, cognitive skills, and in their attitudes. So, today we're going to focus on how we can engage and empower our youth to lead lives filled with compassion and kindness. How can we remove stigma and encourage conversations about their mental health? And how can we, as families, communities, and schools, come together to help our young people? Here to discuss this topic are my guests, Dr. Claudia Santi Fernandez and Dr. Rahul Rangan from Born This Way Foundation. Born This Way Foundation was co-founded and is currently led by Lady Gaga and her mother, Cynthia Germanata, to support youth mental health and help our young people build a kinder, braver world. But how specifically can we do this? So I'm very excited to introduce our guest to help us dig into those questions. Dr. Fernandez is the Director of Research and Evaluation at Born This Way Foundation. She's also an assistant clinical professor of the Child Study Center and in biomedical informatics and data science at the Yale School of Medicine. Dr. Rangan is a physician who currently serves as a research fellow at Cleveland Clinic. He's a member of Born This Way Foundation's Global Youth Advisory Board and advocates for mental health and LGBTQIA+ rights. Welcome to the WebMD Health Discovered podcast, Drs. Fernandez and Rangan.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here with you.
That was such a kind introduction.
Well, I am super excited to jump into my questions because I have 3 young people in my home, so I am definitely very interested in what we're going to be talking about today. But before that, I'd love to hear about your own personal health discoveries. How did you come to this work?
Sure. It truly wasn't one moment in my career. It was a series of moments. And when I started my career, I was a public school teacher, a bilingual school counselor, and one of the founding leadership members of a new school that we opened up in Newark, New Jersey, where I oversaw student support services. In all of those moments, it was really seeing that young people are leading the way already. And we as adults need to get out of the way, provide them with support and the infrastructure and a safe space to let them launch their ideas.
And then, Dr. Rahul, can you share sort of your story? What brought you to this space and this work?
So I've actually noticed most of the health discoveries and aha moments kind of emphasize on interventions and treatment rather than the importance of prevention. And this is where I believe that kindness in the community plays a vital role. Kindness is a very precious but highly underused currency, and it's mostly overshadowed by the rampant judgment that we face in our society. It's like a single kind gesture, let's say a compliment, a kind word, or even a generous smile can really go a long way to brighten someone's day who might be combating internal struggles. And that's what kind of inspired me to build on that wave of kindness and bravery through Born This Way Foundation.
Amazing. So I think you bring me directly to sort of what I really want to talk to you all about. I do feel like we have come to a moment where schools are really sort of thinking about access to mental health services, behavioral health, counseling. And I think it gets to the point that you just made, Dr. Rahul, which is that's very important work. But how do we actually help our kids be intentional about being kind before there's a problem, about having that sort of be something that empowers them to do good, not just because they see something wrong happening, but just something that's part of their day-to-day lives? What are some of the specific programs that the foundation supports in the community?
So, in our research with young people at Born This Way Foundation, we learned that the majority of them report connecting with friends as a strategy to support them during difficult times. And as you shared from research in general, we know that school climate, we know that peer support, we also know a sense of belonging specifically inside the school is so critical. It's just so important. The reality, though, is thinking beyond the school setting because we also know that young people spend a lot of time online. So when we think about how to respond to the needs of young people and how to acknowledge that they're spending a lot of time online, we have to think about free accessible resources and tools and strategies that they can access in those areas. And so we partnered with Jack.org to create the Be There certificate. And the Be There certificate is a free online mental health course. It's available in English, in Spanish. It's also available in French. And it's for anyone to take in order to teach them how to recognize when someone may be struggling, how to understand their role in supporting that person, and then also connect them to the help that they may need and deserve when necessary. It was built by young people for young people. And what's important is that it can be accessed anywhere, which is what's most important.
I'm really curious about how this happens in the wild, in the real world, in terms of kids accessing this resource. Is it usually something that you're finding is school driven? So the school sort of informs children, family, parents about this resource, and then kids kind of access it? Or are children finding this on their own through social media?
It's multi-pronged. So one example is we partner with Hamden Public Schools in Connecticut, and we're very close with the superintendent. And he's a huge advocate for student well-being. And as such, he connected us to his team, who then brought together 40 young people from his school, got them to take the Be There certificate. When they had buy-in, and they were like, wow, this really helped me. I now have the confidence, I have the skills, I have the knowledge to be able to safely support my colleagues and friends. They then went into the classrooms of their school, and their school is approximately 2,000 students in their high school. And what they did was they shared the Be There certificate with their peers. And it's very powerful when you have the young people being the champions of a resource instead of adults, right? And having them really encourage others to try this out and take the course because it helped them as well.
I'd love to pull you in, Dr. Rahul, as a member of the Global Youth Advisory Board. What are you seeing as some of the specific ways that youth are engaging with this type of content? What type of content do you think young people are really sort of yearning for, that you're sort of trying to fill that gap with the work you do?
Honestly, building on what Dr. Claudia just said right now, back in high school, I went through really tough times dealing with bullying, and it kind of took a toll on my mental health. Thankfully, I got the support from some of my peers and my family who showed me that I wasn't alone. And by finding my anchor through programs like the Please Stay Pledge from Born This Way Foundation, it kind of helped me find strength. And then I utilized the Be There certificate course to understand how to see, how to care, how to listen, knowing my role, and how to connect people to the necessary resources that they require when they're facing a mental health struggle. Because peers can actually play a huge role here. Sometimes they're the ones who we turn to when support falls short from others. And I hope that through this podcast, we all kind of work together to be more aware and supportive of people around us so that no one else feels like they're alone in this.
I love what you both have said about really that peer to peer component. We know that's really helpful in medical conditions, absolutely in mental health, to sort of diminish the stigma, to have that peer to peer support. So, when you were mentioning sort of how the certificate works, you're informing students about the ability to get the certificate. Are the people that are sort of doing more of the uptake of the certificate those who already feel connected and grounded? How do you pull in those kids, like Dr. Rahul was mentioning, who might feel like they're outside of the group and they're struggling?
We know that experiential learning is so powerful. And in order to help anyone, we have to help ourselves. And so by taking the Be There certificate, you are able to then better understand how to help somebody else. And some of my background is in game development. A lot of what we do is skill development in helping the avatar or the player navigate challenging experiences. So, in order to help the avatar navigate challenging experience, you are also developing the skills in order to help yourself when needed.
That's really important to hear. So, in terms of being able to access a specific resource like this, if you could potentially bring this to your school or let a principal or a teacher know about this so that you can share it more broadly, how would you recommend someone go about introducing this type of program into their schools?
I believe we need to kind of incorporate mental health because it's been on the back burner for a very long time right now, where people do not talk about it. It's a silent epidemic, actually. So I feel that what happens is you need to kind of integrate this with your course learning because when you see the things like Be There certificate, there are 5 golden rules, which I elucidated before. But what Dr. Claudia mentioned, which is so important, is that you need to first be there for yourself too. And this is something that you need to teach, you need to advocate. And this is actually like where a lot of research and advocacy kind of like plays a major, major role. So that is where I believe that youth-led participatory research is one of the foundational aspects when we come and approach principals and let's say schools about it. Because once you approach it at the grassroots level and give them valuable insight about how the process works, it kind of empowers students to feel safe. It gives them an open and honest environment to have a conversation about their health.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So, Dr. Claudia, just to follow up on that, can you help us break down like what are the components of the Be There certificate? What are some of the skills that you are teaching children, and how are you gamifying that, if at all, through the certificate?
So, with the Be There certificate, there are 5 golden rules, as Dr. Rahul shared, and they are say what you see, show you care, hear them out, know your role, and connect to help. So, the Be There certificate provides an actionable framework, teaching young people how to recognize, as I shared, when someone may be struggling. There's role play inside. There's also an opportunity to select responses. We also recognize that it's important to understand their role in supporting that person because, again, as Dr. Raul shared, this focuses on more of a preventative approach, a youth led preventative approach. And there will be times to recognize when someone may need additional support. And it's important that you feel equipped to say, this is the next step for that additional support. And learning how to connect them to that support is so critical because we know that there's a shortage of providers. And we want to be sure that when we are referring them to support, perhaps we start with a school-based provider, or if they're not inside school, perhaps it's a trusted adult who could then refer them. Perhaps it's their primary care physician. There are different roadmaps to seeking support, but it's important that we have these discussions and that we think through how to appropriately support young people in this process.
That's really helpful. And just to follow up on another point of Dr. Rahul, so in terms of the youth led participatory research, how have you sort of in your work and your research identified when, what age group, what developmental stage is it best to do a program like this? So is this something you want to start in elementary school to like really preempt this? Is this more of a middle school focused program or high school? And then I'd love to kind of get into some of the other programs that you offer.
Definitely. So the best part about youth-led participatory action research is that it sheds light on a very important factor that it kind of challenges the notion that young people are too naive or too inexperienced to contribute meaningfully to research. Where actually in reality, youth often have very unique perspectives that aren't normally considered in traditional research settings. By involving the youth in the research process, it empowers them. It allows us also to gain valuable insight to cater to them, and especially the issues that affect them directly. Added to that, right now, I feel that we're really failing in adequately considering the diverse gender identities, the sexual orientations, races, and ethnicities. And because of this, what happens is our research is really skewed And then the policies and the advocacy efforts, which continue through that, further alienate a substantial portion of the whole population, which does bear a lot of mental health burdens. So it's crucial to remember that when we're advocating for research, we also need to help disseminate these findings, raise awareness, and address these unspoken challenges in the community. And I believe Born This Way Foundation has really exemplified this principle at the grassroots level. And I believe Dr. Claudia could maybe talk more about the research which we've done.
So, our research at Born This Way Foundation, we focus on the ages between 15 to 24. And that's such an important age range to focus on. And the reason being that the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. And as such, oftentimes people talk about adolescence as a risky time period. However, it's also a time period for opportunities to learn new skills because the brain is more malleable. And so those skills then can be learned and then applied to certain situations. So when you engage and develop these skill set during this time, it has a really powerful impact. Last year, we focused on our Kind Communities reports, and we really wanted to learn about what makes kind communities. What are the experiences of young people in their kind communities? Our research focused on a representative sample with oversampling of LGBTQ plus youth and BIPOC youth. As Dr. Roll shared, it is a priority of our foundation to ensure that we are inclusive of all voices. And what we learned is that LGBTQ youth and transgender and non-binary youth found comfort and kindness online. And specifically, we learned that LGBTQ youth have been more likely than their non-LGBTQ plus peers to rely on online communities to support their mental health. And so when we think about this and we think about our future directions, we recognize that our Kind Communities report helped us better understand the important themes around a broader population, including the value of online communities among LGBTQ plus youth. But we were unable to parse out the unique differences within the subpopulations of LGBTQ plus youth. And so this year, we are partnering with Hope Lab to conduct a survey with a sample of LGBTQ youth to better understand the intersectional factors that create kind and brave communities online.
That's really important information. I think just in terms of being able to segment populations and recognize what works for some folks might not work for others, and how do we really identify the specific intervention for the specific youth group, I think is really important. I'm curious about self-compassion, and so by extension, self-kindness. What are some of the specific ways that some of the work you're doing teaches folks not just to be outward looking, but how do you look inside? How do you do a check-in with yourself to see that you're being kind to yourself?
So we actually started off with the Be Kind 21 movement, which was 21 days of practicing kindness to yourself in your surroundings and helping yourself with the people around you. And we got a phenomenal result. After doing research and seeing how it worked, like the Kindness in Action research report, we found that people had a really positive influence through practicing kindness to themselves for 21 days, that we actually launched Be Kind 365, which is an online platform where people can practice kindness every day, not only for themselves, but also to other people in their community. So it's like how I said before, that one smile, that one compliment, that one action which you do can have a ripple effect, and it just keeps spreading. And that's the best part that Born This Way Foundation has actually come to achieve.
Oh my God, I love that. Even though I'm not in necessarily your demographic of interest, I think I might partake in this challenge. Anything else that you'd like to share about the work that you're doing, how parents, how community members might be able to get involved beyond just informing the youth around us about this type of programming?
Exactly what you just shared. It's the experiential learning piece. Because when you experience the programs, when you practice Be Kind 365, when you engage in the Be There certificate, it's transformative because you see how it's impacting yourself, and then you're able to speak to it when you share it with others. I'm all about experiential learning and really engaging with these programs before you share them.
I believe as the generations have progressed, currently there's this talk of learning and unlearning, which is going on in our communities. And I believe we should be open to that, taking in the positive and unlearning the negative. It's about that. It's about making the best version of yourself, irrespective of how old you are, where you come from, and what you do. It's about just being kind to yourself, being there for people, and just being open to learning. And we have so many tools which Born This Way Foundation provides for people to learn and to practice that in their everyday lives.
So I'd love to close this episode with a bite-sized bit of information for our audience so that they can start practicing kindness tonight or right after listening. So could we start with Dr. Rahul? What's your one action item or one tip that you have to empower our audience? And then Dr. Claudia.
Be kind to yourself and be kind to the people around you, because that can really impact someone else's mental health. You have the power to impact someone else's mental health. So try to be kind every day and practice kindness, and that'll make you the bravest person in this world.
For those of us with young people in our households, I would say really checking in with our young people and engaging in ongoing conversations with them about how they are feeling, as well as modeling how we are feeling when we check in with them. It's very powerful to practice these skills with our young people so that they see us doing the work as well.
I love that. Thank you both so much for being with us today. We've talked with Dr. Claudia Santi Fernandez and Dr. Rahul Rangan from Born This Way Foundation. The key things that I'm taking away are that there are very specific and actionable things we can do to support our children, not just when they're in crisis, but to help them incorporate kindness into their lives every single day. And I know I'm certainly going to check out the resources so that I can try to take part in the Be Kind 365 challenge. To find out more information about Born This Way Foundation, visit bornthisway.foundation, which will also link in our show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Please take a moment to follow, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. If you'd like to send me an email about topics you're interested in or questions for future guests, please send me a note at webmdpodcast@webmd.net. This is Dr. Neha Pathak for the WebMD Health Discovered podcast.